Well, hello. I thought I'd make a video about my small wood drying kiln that I have at home. I tend to use this just for my own wood, to make my own firewood, my own kindling. There's not much to it. It didn't cost a great deal to make. I'm just going to talk you through what's involved. I hope the light isn't too dark. I have a 500 watt halogen light in here, which is extremely bright and extremely hot, so I've got it pointing in the opposite direction. Okay, so what I've done here, firstly, this is in my shed stroke workshop at home, and I am on a I'm basically on a bench. I'm on a bench in the shed. And what I've done is I've built a frame out of 1 by 2 inch timber, which I just had lying around, and then at the sides and the back I have added some 75mm king span insulation. The bottom and the top are actually just very thin tin foil bubble wrap insulation, and that's all you need really. This is a dehumidifier kiln, so you don't really want the temperature getting up to stupidly high temperatures because it will kill your dehumidifier. The main problem that I have is actually keeping this thing cool enough so that the dehumidifier doesn't automatically switch off. Initially I did have the thick king span at the back, the bottom, and at the top and at the front, and it was just getting too hot too quickly, so I basically removed the king span thick insulation from the bottom and from the top. One of the key things that this kiln relies on is the principle of completely isolating what's inside from the outside world. So once the wood or the kindling, whatever, goes in and the dehumidifier gets switched on, then I'll then tape this front cover shut and I will seal it off completely, apart from where the drain pipe comes out, and I'll show you how that works in a moment. Let's talk about the dehumidifier. Now, the dehumidifier itself is just a standard, it's just a standard shop bought dehumidifier that you get from your local DIY shop. There's not much to it. The key thing to remember is that this thing does not really work very well above 35 degrees centigrade. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, sorry. So you have to keep the kiln warm, but you have to keep it cool enough so that this will continue to work. Now, the great thing about this system is, once you turn that dehumidifier on, the latent heat it generates, because remember, all a dehumidifier is a refrigerator, the latent heat it generates will be trapped inside here, and it will actually raise the temperature within the kiln. Now, it'll take 24 hours to do this. Once it reaches the temperature at which you think it's operating at its most efficient, what I then do is I set this thermostat to switch off. The thermostat is temperature controlled, and I bury the probe in the middle of the wood that I'm drying out. At the moment I have this set so that it turns off at 35 and it doesn't turn back on again until it reaches down about 25. The way moisture moves in wood is that, let me get a piece of wood here, and this is how a lot of dodgy wood sellers operate. This is more or less fresh cut wood. If I put a moisture meter into the end of this wood now, it would say moisture content 10%, and you think, oh great, you can burn that. However, the inside of the wood, the moisture content is going to be near 60 or 70. So if I put this wood in here to dry, what will happen is that the outside will shed the moisture, and that will get down to 0. The inside will still be wet. If I turn the dehumidifier off and I then let the wood and the inside equalize with the outside, the moisture will make its way to the outer part of the wood where, and the next dehumidification cycle, it can be vented to the outside. That is the principle of what we're trying to attain here. You do not have this thing running 24 hours a day. It goes on and then it switches off. It goes on and it switches off. With the dehumidifier, you need to have one which has a permanent vent to the outside world. If I fill this with wood to the ceiling, fresh cut, softwood in particular, I will probably pull out 40 or 50 litres of water. That's a lot of water. So you can't rely on the built-in. You can't rely on the built-in, what would you call that? I don't know, drain bucket of the dehumidifier. The other thing that you probably will find it useful to do is to, I don't know if you can see this yet. Okay, let's see if I can move this in a little closer. I'm going to disconnect here. Bear with me. There we go. I'm stuck in a shed. I'm banging my head. I've got so much rubbish banging around behind me. You wouldn't believe it. So forgive the clattering and the banging. One thing I have done here is that this. Let's see if I can get there. This is where the moisture that the dehumidifier collects would drain into the inbuilt drain bucket. I've actually closed that off. I don't want the drain bucket filling up at all. I want it to stay empty, because then, there you go, because then all of the moisture will drain from the back of the dehumidifier down into a bucket of your choice. Okay, let's have a look at how I would actually set this up. Once this is filled with wood, and I'll show you how you do that in a moment, because airflow is crucial to this. What I will do is, oh god, I've just got wet. I've just got wet because I only switched this off and emptied it this morning. So I'm going to take the plug for the thermostat, and I'm going to plug that in up there. Where are you? Come on, I can't see. There you are. And there the thermostat switches on. So what are we looking at here? The top number is telling me what the current temperature is as detected by the probe. If I take hold of the probe, that top temperature will shoot right up. There we go. Now, the temperature of 37 degrees that you see there, that is the temperature at which this will switch off. Now that's important, because when this switches off, this switches off. Now I know that this, if you like, over measures temperature. So when it says it's 37 degrees, I know that in actual fact it's probably near 33 or 32 degrees, which is why I've got that set for 37. If this was actually very accurate, I would have that set for 35. So on the top of the dehumidifier, can we see this? You see the DH there? That means that dehumidifier is on maximum and it is on permanent. I can of course set this to continuous operation. I can set it to 30% humidity, 35% humidity, 40% humidity. But what I do is I just leave it on continuous operation, CO. What that then means is this runs all the time, and it is actually controlled by the thermostat. The thermostat lives outside because I don't want it getting wet, because it can get quite damp in there. And I can come every day, or usually 2 or 3 times a day, and I can check what's going on here. So to recap, we have dehumidifier, which is just an ordinary household dehumidifier. It's not an industrial one. We have that on maximum, set to be on permanently. It is controlled by a thermostat, and the thermostat, well, it's more or less set to be always on, but once it reaches, I've set for 37 degrees, centigrade. In actuality, that's nearer 34 or 35. Once it hits that temperature, that will switch off the dehumidifier, stops everything overheating, and it allows the dry air within the kiln to just circulate. It will probably take 12 to 24 hours. Oh, there we go. Dehumidifier has just turned itself on there. It will probably take 12 to 24 hours for this to actually reach the highest operating temperature, which is, it tends to float around 32 degrees as measured by the thermostat. Okay, let's have a look at how you set this up to put wood into it. Okay, so how do we set this up to actually stack it with wood? As you can hear, the dehumidifier is actually on. It is just dehumidifying at the moment. I'm going to turn it off, otherwise we're going to start getting water coming out of this tube in about 5 minutes. So I shall unplug that. There we go. Now clearly, if we just fill this with wood, there will not be enough air circulation to actually dry the wood effectively. What you will find happens is that the part of the dehumidifier which blows the, if you like, dehumidified air out will just dry whatever's here, and whatever's at the back part of the kiln stays wet. So the first thing you need to do is set it up so that there is good air movement around whatever you put in. It's also interesting to note, or important to note, that the air intake is arranged so that it is away from whatever it is you're trying to dry, and the air output is facing towards it. To accomplish this, first we need some house bricks. Okay, so I cut out the very boring 2 minutes where I'm actually putting these house bricks in and I'm arranging them. The purpose of the house bricks is to allow airflow underneath anything that I put in there. I've also repositioned the dehumidifier so that it's farther away, but I have actually left a gap at the side because clearly it needs to be able to draw in moist air in order to blow out less moist air. Okay, so next step. And as if by magic, a cage has appeared. I'm actually filming this at night, and the light I'm using is either too bright or too dark, and of course this whole thing's very reflective, so I'm sorry if you're struggling to see what I'm doing. I'm doing my best here. This cage is actually an old fire guard. That's all it is. Oops, lift that out there. Use anything you want, really. I do find that this actually supports what I need to put in here very well. One point I will make, I'm not sure if I've actually stressed this before, you do need to make sure that the inside of your kiln is completely sealed from the outside world. So right the way along here, the top, right the way down the side, I've got aluminium tape. All the seams are fully taped, some of them are double taped. You do not want any heat to escape, and you do not want any moisture from the outside world coming into your kiln. Otherwise you're just trying to dehumidify the outside world and not just what's in the kiln. Okay. The key to making this thing work is airflow. The dehumidifier will pump out dry, warm air. Well, it pumps out dry air, but the latent heat from the dehumidifier will heat up the air within here, so it ends up as dry, warm air. It will pump that out all day long. If that dry, warm air is only drying what's at the front of the kiln, that's no good. It needs to reach what's at the back. So what I do is I will fix just some ducting. So this will intercept part of the airflow as it emerges from the dehumidifier. and then I can route this wherever I want, really. Over the top, down the side, down the back. If I wanted to, I could route it underneath. I've got a version of this where I have holes in here. You need to stack your wood so that air can circulate freely though. And I have stacked this to the very top, and as long as you've got airflow around, it will work, and what is at the bottom here will dry just as effectively as what is at the top over here. Okay. What I will then do is I will close the front, and right on cue you hear the dehumidifier start. Now I'm not going to do this now. It looks like I'm launching something into space. This looks like the James Webb Space Telescope. What I will do is I will take aluminium tape and I will seal right the way along here, on the sides, right the way along the front and up the other side, and I will completely enclose the whole affair. Now what that basically means is once that's switched on, the only gaps you have will be where the wire comes out and where the vent hose comes out, and then you've got an effectively closed system. The heat will be trapped inside, it will be circulating dry warm air, and all the time it will continue to dehumidify. And every morning, every evening I'll come out, I will empty what's drained in the bucket, and based upon the volume and weight of what's gone in there, I know how many litres of water I need to come out, and by the time I'm getting down to maybe half a litre a day, a litre a day maybe, I know that that wood is good to go, it's dry enough. That is how you build your own dehumidifying kiln at home. Now I'm going to split some kindling, I'm going to stack it in there, and we'll set it up for real. Can I also just say, if you've stuck with me for this long, listening to me talking about how you build a dehumidifier kiln, then you, just like me, need to get out more. Okay, so a couple of hours later, I've got my kindling split and it's in there. I'm just going to say a word about kindling. You often see advertised kindling which is lovely and straight, nice and smooth. That's not the best kindling. The best kindling is crazy stuff like this, because stuff like this has lots of rough edges to catch the flame. This is actually spruce, which is fantastic kindling. If you're buying kindling, look for stuff that looks like this. Don't look for the nice smooth flat stuff. It doesn't work very well. It works okay, but that stuff's better. So here we are. So I've now filled this with kindling. The moisture content on this is probably about 40%, I'd say, at the minute, because it's been air drying for a little while. So let's get the kiln set up. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the thermostat probe and I'm going to put it into the centre of the wood pile. Let's say somewhere around there. That will give me an accurate indication of what the temperature is inside the pile of kindling. What I've also done, although you can't really see it, is I've actually built that stack so that there's a bit of an air gap running up the middle, so the dehumidified air can actually circulate freely. I've also positioned that ducting across the top so that the dehumidified air can also reach the far side of the pile of kindling. However, it's probably not needed because we're talking about a closed system here and the air will circulate very well. Okay, now if we look down the bottom, we see our moisture vent hose, which is that. We see our thermostat cable, which is that. We see the power cable for the dehumidifier, which is that. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to turn the dehumidifier on. There we go. I'm now going to check that the dehumidifier works on continuous operation. No timer. Percentage. CO. There we go. Continuous operation. Once that refrigeration element gets down to temperature, the fan will switch on and it'll begin to do its thing. You can see at the moment that the temperature is currently 9.8 degrees in here. That's centigrade. It's actually quite a warm day considering it's January and we're in Northern England on the coast. Okay, we are now ready to close the whole thing up. You bring the front cover down. I am actually able to actually light this thing properly now because it's filled with wood, and so you're not getting the terrible reflection from the from this 400 watt halogen light that I've got behind me, so you can actually see what's going on a bit better here. So I'm now going to bring this down, and I'm now going to tape along the bottom and the sides. That's very boring, so I'm going to pause this while I actually do that. And so here we go. I'm afraid this shot's very boring, there's not very much to show. All I've done is I've gone round and I have taped the ends to completely seal the kiln. One thing I will say is use an aluminium tape. It's waterproof and it doesn't lose its stickiness. Don't use duct tape because that will lose its stickiness, and if you use the very tough duct tape you'll find that you'll not be able to get it off and it's very difficult to cut through. With this tape, when you're finished, you can just run a blade along the bottom and it'll come apart very easily. So there you go, that's the whole thing. See, temperature's up to 10 degrees there now. Tomorrow morning when I come back, that temperature will read 25 degrees. When I come back tomorrow evening, it will be up at 35. By tomorrow morning when I come back, that water vent pipe will have probably put 2 to 3 litres of water into that bucket. The kindling that I put in there now will be dry in 4 days. So there we have it, how to build your own wood drying kiln at home. I use it for firewood. I'm sure that if you're a woodworker, you could probably rig something like this up yourself as well. One of the big advantages is that it doesn't just rely on getting your wood up to a crazy temperature and then you vent all of that heat to the outside, which is extremely wasteful and probably not very good for the planet. The big advantage of this is that the latent heat from the dehumidifier is what actually produces the warmth inside the kiln to accelerate the drying process, and then the dehumidified air actually speeds up the process even more. I've just noticed a little gap there. Okay, I'm gonna put some tape over that. It is essential that this thing is as sealed as it can possibly get. If any outside air gets in, then all you're doing is dehumidifying the outside atmosphere, and you're probably not going to do that in 4 days. It might take you like 4 million years or something. But there we go. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe to my channel because I'm going to be starting to put up a few more how-to videos in terms of firewood, chainsaws, firewood processing, that sort of thing. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.